And we are now live.
This is Senate Appropriations Committee, and we're continuing our work on the fiscal 2022 budget. And this afternoon, we're taking testimony from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So we have the Secretary here, as well as the Commissioners of Economic Development, Housing, and Community Development, the Commissioner of Tourism and Marketing, and then Kathy Thayer-Gosselin's here, and she's the financial person who's overseeing all the spending that's going on, in which there has been a lot in light of all the CRF money. So welcome, and I'm going to ask Secretary Curley if I assume you have some documents that you may want to share on the screen, but just to point out, Senate Appropriations probably is not going to go into the same level of detail as you might have been expected in the House. I think you know that we really want you to use this time to talk about the budget highlights, sort of the initiatives, the challenges ahead, any specific recommendations as it relates to the spending initiatives, of which there are several, and also what you see as, I know that with the release of the rental assistance money, certainly Commissioner Hanford has been busy there. So I think we'd like to use it as an opportunity to get caught up as well in terms of a lot of these programs and benefits that have been flowing from the various departments within the agency out to Vermonters and Vermont businesses. So I'm going to let you take it from there in terms of how you want to present your budget highlights to us. But we don't do line by line. We know that you have, fee for space, you have internal service charges, et cetera. That's pretty standard. But what we really want you to do is use this as an opportunity to give us kind of what you feel are the important areas of not only the budget, but also the work of the agency.
This is Kathy. Chrissy is going to run it for us. She said she would do that.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. For the record, I'm Lindsay Curley. I'm the Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And Senator, I would like to thank you for putting all of us out of our misery. If we had to go line by line, you would all be asleep very soon. So we appreciate that. With me today, I have Commissioner Hanford. He is the Commissioner of the Department of Housing and Community Development, Commissioner Pelham, the Department of Tourism and Marketing, Commissioner Goldstein, the Department of Economic Development. As you mentioned, we have Kathy Thayer-Gosselin, who is our Administrative Services Director, who has put this budget together for us with the help of our team, and Jess Vintner, our Legislative Affairs Director. So,
hi, Jess. I haven't even had to bother you lately, but it's good you're here with us today.
She has been busy trying to get this package over the finish line for us. So absolutely glad to have her here. As you mentioned, you've all seen our budget presentations in the past, and we have certainly prepared for you our traditional budget book. However, we have also prepared a slide deck that goes a little deeper into the special initiatives and the more than 25 million in proposed one-time funding for fiscal year 22 for the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And I know that you all don't need a reminder, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention and remind everybody of the incredible amount of work that our agency has done in the last 11 months in response to the pandemic. In the last 11 months, we were able to deploy nearly $190 million in Corona relief funds through about a dozen different programs. This is 5 times our normal budget and 10 times our general fund budget. So I want to thank you all for helping us.
Lindsay, you're cutting in and out. Maybe we should have you just go to audio, or am I the only one having trouble?
I'm hearing her fine.
I can hear.
Oh, you are? Okay. Or maybe it's me.
All right, I'll continue, but if we have a problem, we can regroup here.
Right.
So I just really wanted to thank you all for helping us create those programs and for giving ACCD and the Department of Tax the flexibility that we need to get those funds out the door. The FY22 base budget includes an increase in base funding of about 1.5 million. That is due to a request to create a permanent new worker program at the agency and funding for a new permanent home ownership program within the Department of Housing. And I will have the commissioners speak more to this program structure in a few minutes. I'm going to quickly walk the committee through this very first slide, which is an infographic and a high-level overview of the agency, and then briefly walk us through the budget summary and a budget highlights slide. So after that, I'll turn it over to the commissioners to take you through their individual departments. I'm just pulling some of my notes back up here. I apologize. Okay. So on the infographic slide here, we have, this is our agency-wide infographic. And at the heart of what we're talking about today is our FY22 budget of $49 million and change. And as you can see, 60% of that goes to the Department of Housing and Community Development, and a majority of DHCD's budget is federal funds courtesy of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The other number I want to draw your attention to now is the number on the very bottom left, which is 15.9 million. This is the total base general fund appropriation we're seeking. And as I mentioned previously, that is up from last year by 1.5 million, which you'll hear more about very shortly. You'll see from the donut chart that the agency is primarily funded by general fund and federal funds, with a little revenue generated in our state historic sites and some other special transfers that occur. We are the smallest agency in state government with a staff of 79. If you look to the right-hand side of this slide, you will see the agency's mission and our strategies. Deputy Secretary Brady created this acronym, and you may have heard him talk about it before. This is where we identify our strategies as our ideas. This is the core of what the agency is working towards and what we are trying to accomplish. So I is the illuminating the vibrancy of Vermont. D is deploying a 21st century workforce. E is ensuring housing for all. A is accelerating business growth and recruitment. And S is strengthening our regional communities and economies. We work every single day with these strategies in mind through the agency's 3 departments. Our Department of Economic Development has 21 staff. Our Department of Housing and Community Development has a staff of 32, and our Department of Tourism and Marketing has a staff of 13. And we have an admin division that we could not function without, and those staff gets us to a total of 79 people who day in and day out work to support Vermonters, Vermont businesses, and every Vermont community. So I won't go through all of the specifics in the infographic, but you will see the high-level outcomes, contributions, and achievements of each department here. And if you can take time at some point to look at it in more detail, and feel free to get with us if you have questions on this. Chrissy, if you'll go to the next slide, please. So as we work to recover from this pandemic, you're all aware the state has been fortunate to have that we've generated more revenue than we expected. And the concept you see before you is one that drives us to use one-time dollars in a smart way to make one-time investments that will hopefully lead to significant return on investments for our state. We've put together a package of proposals that we are confident will use the one-time dollars to increase economic growth, increase tax revenues, and increase quality of life for our communities. We have this small $1.5 million up this year in our base, but enterprise-wide, we have put together a very ambitious, if not the most ambitious, economic development package that is more than $200 million in the governor's FY22 budget. And our agency is responsible, if you look to the bottom in the highlighted number, we are responsible for just over 27 million in one-time proposal that are directly touching into our agency. Now, we also intersect with other agencies on a variety of the proposals that also add to the 200 million. Some of those just really briefly include broadband, outdoor economy, some tax exemptions, and more. Some are escaping me, but I just wanted to highlight that we do have some cross sectors. Next slide, please.
Oh,
Yes, Senator Burris.
I'm sorry, Secretary Curley.
Yes.
I haven't seen you since
Hi.
you made your promotion. I'm wondering on the T-bed grant at the top,
Yes.
my part of the budget includes higher ed.
Okay.
I'm wondering, I don't want to take the committee's time, but could you send me whatever more in-depth information you have on that 1 million?
Absolutely. I
Got it.
suspect that somebody probably will have it in your inbox before I get through the next slide.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Let me
Um,
ask you, Secretary Curley.
Sure.
In light of the bill that Congress is about to pass, where even little small towns are getting $300,000, a huge amount is going, what is it, over 300 million going out to towns and counties. To what extent do you think that would influence what you're proposing here for use of one-time general fund as opposed to the resources that come in, and how we've been trying to think about how we can support the technical assistance and provide some background and resources to towns and cities as they're trying to figure out how to use this money, both in terms of current needs, but as well as long-term needs. I had a small town say, gee, if we had solar installation, that would really help us with the cost of our, municipal utilities for our fire department and our businesses. And I don't know if that's a permissible use for some of the for any of the funds going out, but I'm thinking that with this very large infusion of money that seems to be available directly to towns, that may in fact alter or make anything that we have on our one-time list really look inconsequential as we are kind of grappling with the infusion of this money once we know what it is and how it can be used.
Right. Yes, I hope you're right. I hope it does make it look inconsequential, so that I hope we get a lot of money that we can help so many with. I think you're referring to the American Rescue Plan. And as you may, understand, we haven't had time to understand it fully. We're working through that right now. Currently, our team is not imagining or proposing that anything that we are proposing today would change as a result of that. But our minds are open as we learn more. We will be nimble and pivot as we might need to. Our team is going to be getting together this afternoon to start some of the discussions on that. But again, it's still not signed and passed. So we're going to forge ahead with the information we have at the moment and stay on track. But thank you for raising that point, and that is absolutely something that we will keep at the forefront of our minds as we go forward.
Well, of course, the advantage we have in the Senate is that we come last. And so oftentimes things that are still very tenuous or uncertain when the House is having to do the budget become much more definitive as we move along. So I'm just throwing it out there. We had a briefing with Congressman Welch, and it seems like we don't have the problem with the spending time limits that we had with the CRF money. And it seems like there's more flexibility, particularly as it relates to the state and to the needs of our cities and towns. So it's just something we know we have to look at. And it's not uncommon that we've had, if federal money subsequently becomes available, that's what we use first. So it's with that in mind that I'm just saying, I know that you'll be looking at it. I'm just saying we're going to be looking at it too.
Good, great, perfect. I will turn now to talk about this very next infographic that you see, which is a holistic picture of all the items that touch ACCD this year and the proposals that we will contribute directly to the economy and the economic recovery of our state. So when we think about the pandemic recovery, we think about three categories: recovery, reemployment, and reinvestment. So if you look at the page in front of you, you can see how we've broken it out into recovery, reemployment, and reinvestment. We talk about recovery in terms of our proposal to get additional funds to businesses who have not received any financial help this far. Our Everyone Eats program, which you all have championed and been so supportive of. We are so grateful for that. and as well as our proposal to help spur recovery in our tourism economy. When we talk about reemployment, we talk about attracting Vermonters. We talk about attracting people to our state and also reemploying the Vermonters that are in our state. We also want to protect the UI trust funds while protecting the businesses who pay into it. We also think about reemployment in the literal sense that we need to be doing all we can from an IT perspective and a boots on the ground perspective to make sure that we're helping Vermonters reattach to employment and our labor force. We have to get people that are sitting on the sidelines off the sidelines. When we talk about reinvestments, we're talking about investing in our communities, housing, and economic development opportunities. We can reinvest in our communities through proposals like increasing the downtown tax credit, the downtown transportation fund, and Better Places program, but also in Act 250 reforms and allowing smaller rural communities equitable access to economic development tools like the place-based TIP program. We've proposed crucial reinvestments in our broadband programs and our brownfield programs, which will help spur economic development activity in our rural communities as well. We are proposing reinvestments in housing, ensuring that low and middle income Vermonters have access to housing, getting more units back online in our communities, fully funding VHCB's property transfer tax, and supporting Vermonters who want to upgrade or purchase energy efficient manufactured homes. We are proposing reinvestments in economic development through proposals that include taking advantage of the momentum the pandemic has afforded us and strengthening technology-based businesses and making sure that just because international borders have been closed for the year, that we're not missing out on recruiting international businesses to come to Vermont. When we talk about reinvestments, we're also proposing to make one-time investments in the outdoor recreation industry and economy to spur economic activity and tax revenue in future years. And then the last line item that you see down at the bottom, these are operational items that aren't in our budget necessarily, like grant systems upgrades that our agency is asking to invest. It's in the ADS budget so that we can more efficiently track and administer the grants that we currently have and grants in the future, as well as making a one-time investment in the 250th anniversary commission. With that,
that's a priority.
Yeah. With that, I would like to turn it over to Commissioner Hanford, who will outline the ups and downs of DHCD, and he can go into some detail about a lot of the items that I highlighted here that are related to housing and community development. So next slide, and Josh, you are up.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, Josh Hanford, Commissioner of Housing and Community Development. This is our department high-level infographic, which gives you some statistics, some measurements from fiscal year 2020, because that's the only year that's complete at this point. So we're sort of looking at 3 years right now at any given time on this sheet. Accomplishments from 2020, and then our 21, we're underway with those programs, and then our 22 ask. Just very high level, these are our 4 major divisions within the department. Our community development division is federally funded with community development block grants. That's a program that's been around since 1974, and we fund everything from housing, job creation, sewer, water, planning grants, homeless shelters. It's really driven by the needs of the community, and we track and measure the results. And we're using housing as a metric for this past year. Those are new housing units that we created with the funding. In our budget detail, it goes into each different eligibility of the community development program. You could see how much we spent on public infrastructure and ADA access and libraries and town halls and all of the eligible programs. But at the high level, I'm going to stay here. We're just going to focus on one metric. We also have our community planning and revitalization division. This is the team that administers the downtown and village center tax credits, the municipal planning grants, the RPC block grants, and a number of other initiatives like the Better Places proposal, downtown transportation fund. And that division is mainly general fund or state special fund funded. It serves almost every community in the state each year through the many number of grant and tax credit programs, and leverages quite a bit. We have our historic preservation team, which is also a majority federal funded. They invest program dollars through the federal historic tax credit program, as well as the barn grant program and the historic preservation grant program that are funded from the Building Communities Fund. That we also manage properties open to the public and assist with historic property revitalization projects across the state. And then we have a very small housing team, which one of the main functions is to assist all the mobile home parks in the state. We literally have a lot registration for every mobile home lot in the state. The number of units of housing preserved there represents the number of units in mobile home parks that we had direct contact with, direct assistance in 2020, because there was either habitability complaints, there was purchase and sales agreements, there was notice of closure. So anytime a mobile home park has anything like that going on, we have direct involvement in every one of those lot owners because they're in such a vulnerable position, owning a home on land that they don't own. You could see that the impacts summarized on the left. We $18 million invested, leveraged over $231 million. The communities assisted in housing units either preserved or created. I will point out that our budget, about 70% of our staff receives a majority of their funding comes from federal sources. So we are the largest department in the agency, but we use the least amount of general fund. Probably the next slide.
Oh, Josh, I have a question. We just released the $110 million for rental assistance. And one of the, it ties into your comment about mobile home parks. And I believe that you have talked about the very large park down in Brattleboro. Is it Tri Park or
Tri Park?
Tri
Yes.
Something? Is there any, and there are a number of those mobile homes that are actually, you said not only, they're in the floodplain, I guess, they're not even close to it. So I just wondered if you have been able to identify to date whether how much flexibility or there was such a large amount of money, 110 million, well, and we still have 53 million left. Do you see any potential for that federal money to assist in any of these, long-standing challenges as it relates to our mobile home parks?
The short answer is, in that particular batch of money,
The
not
answer
very
is
likely.
no, huh?
No, I mean,
Okay.
the residents will be able to access the funding to pay their lot rent if
Yeah.
they meet the income eligibility. And we have an open grant with Tri-Park and the town of Brattleboro that we've just extended and are adding more money to actually further engineer and plan for the removal of those 20 lots that are in the floodway. The reality is there's a lot of infrastructure work that needs to happen at that park, and downsizing 20 lots is going to reduce their cash flow, so that's what we're trying to figure out in a very coordinated way. But that 110 million, unfortunately, no.
Oh,
The new
okay.
money coming
I
in.
was just thinking that there might be a way of using them to prepare alternative lots and build it into the rent for a year or something like that.
Yeah, what we can do is there's this other group of housing support services that we're put out a joint notice of funding availability with AHS, Department of Family and Children, where we expect some of the groups that help mobile home parks, like the CVOEO mobile home program, could use some of that housing support services to work with those families that are in those 20 units to try to potentially plan for their ultimate moving and see if we can't get them into a more stable housing situation to allow for that to come. So direct capital to move their home, no, but we can do other support services to help the individuals affected.
Oh, no, I was thinking of using the rent to pay the capital investment to finance the upgrade of the lot, but
We'll keep looking at it.
all right. So that's, I'm sure you are. Never want to miss an opportunity to deal with some of these fairly long-standing and serious problems. So,
Absolutely.
oh
Madam
my
Chair?
gosh, and we're very familiar with this. And let me tell you, we only want the highlights. We do not want every ups and downs that you might have on here, like you have
Absolutely.
$4,303.
I can give you the very high level. What's
Yeah.
going on here
Um,
is
That would be great. Otherwise, it would be a form of, I guess, Friday afternoon torture for members of the committee. So,
I completely understand. So basically,
Madam
all of
Chair?
these ups and downs are summarized with two issues going on here. We've received over $10 million
Madam
more
Chair.
in federal funding than we normally do.
Senator Westman is trying to get your attention.
I'm sorry. Okay,
No
Rich?
problem. Yeah,
I-
you just, you asked the question about rental assistance. The Vermont State Housing Authority, their website hasn't been updated since 12/28 on the rental assistance, and it says come back soon to see when do we expect them to reopen something so renters can or update the website so renters will know a timetable of when things are coming along.
Yeah, great question. So they're currently interviewing vendors to help stand up the program right now. Hopefully they have someone selected in the next week or two. It's, this is a big chunk of money and there's a lot of people interested in helping them run the program. So they're doing their due diligence to select the best one. And we're lining up other supports to help reach all eligible Vermonters, because this is a large chunk of funding that can benefit a lot of people. So, I'm hesitant to tell you what their time frame is, but as soon as they've selected someone, that website will say, we have, a new program, accepting applications starting X. They're working diligently, trying to get that up as fast as possible.
Yeah, I would just say that it's been 2 months since the last time it was updated, and what it says is coming soon, new emergency rental assistance funds. They might find a way to say something because it has been 2 months.
I completely understand and certainly can give them that feedback. I think they've been very hesitant to tell people and send them on some sort of wild goose chase, knowing that the money, it was just a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago that they got the approval. They even knew that there was money coming their way. I believe that the CRF funding that was in the Budget Adjustment Act also was just approved. So they should be able to pay the 1,500 applications that have been unfunded since the beginning of December, which should help. I know landlords are struggling. I hear from them daily, nightly, and folks that aren't able to pay their utility bills either. And they're waiting for that part of that funding to be available.
I think we sent it back to the House last Friday, the budget adjustment that had that December payment of funding for that. So I'm sure it's the governor's got it. So at least that one is done. The 110 was the other action that we took through joint fiscal. And it does take a little bit of time to work out the details on that. But I guess people are so anxious. I think as Senator Westman's saying, if the more current we can make the information, I think the more it helps address the anxiety that both landlords and tenants are having.
Yeah, I think, it hasn't changed in 2 months. There ought to be some update and even some note telling that every week or every 2 weeks, they ought to check it might be nice.
I will have that conversation.
We
Thank
could
you.
put on, for further information, contact Senator Westman at.
No way. Senator Starr wanted those calls.
Senator Starr has had some of those calls from communication we have had. Yes. So what's going on here in very short order is we've received over $10 million of additional federal funds from HUD in our FY22 budget. And so we have shifted our use of general fund for salaries down. That's what that is represented, because we have more federal funds to pay for staff's time to work on these programs. So that gets most of the changes here. The other is that our historic sites, they operate on visitors, attendance and gift shop sales. And, because of the pandemic last summer, their sales were down dramatically. They have an opening schedule that is slightly delayed this summer. That's our operational plan, not really to open most of them until beginning of July. And they anticipate less revenue coming in this year as well. So we have shifted more of our general fund savings to offset their budget deficit. So that's essentially what all the downs and ups are about. And then the last piece is I think Secretary Cohen mentioned about a $1.5 million up in our base budget for the whole agency. Well, about 1.1 of that is in DHCD's budget, represented by a base investment in the VHIP program and a $100,000 budget for a housing specialist to the department. We only have 2 housing staff, and we've been moving, tens of millions of dollars in the housing world and see that continuing. So that is all of the ups and downs on this page, really, those 3 items.
Okay. So in summary, you said you're using some of the HUD money and that can be used for salaries, freeing up general fund. So I'm assuming because next year you fall off the cliff if you're using one-time money for base, but it looks like you're just doing a one-time swap out with the general fund from on salaries to make up the historic sites shortfall, which hopefully in 23 will be back to normal.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right. I guess we've
down to the one-time information about the one-time fund requests, I think is next.
Okay.
So one of the biggest investments for housing is our Vermont Housing Investment Program, VHIP. And really what we've done here is taken the lessons learned from the CRF, funded VHIP program, where in 6 short months, basically we stood the program up in September. And as of now, we've done 245 units of housing, serving Vermonters in need of housing and moving people out of homelessness. And these are homes. These are existing properties that were offline, vacant, had code issues, and we're able to provide incentive grants and deferred loans to private owners. But it was managed by the public nonprofit housing organizations, that had project managers and ensured the work was done. It had long-term affordability commitments, had match required by the landlords, and really it averaged about $25,000 per unit that we stood up. It's really made a difference in this pandemic. And so learning from those lessons, we want to invest with this one-time funding we're fortunate to have right now in this housing stock. These are our homes in our neighborhoods that surround our downtowns and villages that you drive through and you see a lack of investment. You see, homes that are boarded up, and there are unfortunately way too many of these. And we have lots of stories of landlords and neighborhoods that need this ongoing investment. So that's what this is about, learning our lessons from the CRF funding, continuing this program, and making long-term investments in our housing stock that will benefit low-income Vermonters. And in a home, this is not the other CRF funded program where we were converting, and many times, motels and hotels converting those rooms into mini apartments. These are historic homes in our neighborhoods that will really serve these families long term and help with property tax values increasing, and just an overall investment in a neighborhood that everyone can feel good about, with the proper oversight and the public return for a very modest investment. I said they were averaging 25,000 per unit. This program, as we have developed it, and in both bills in the House and the Senate, has a $30,000 per unit cap, a 20% match required, a weatherization requirement, and an affordability covenant that goes on the property that either has to serve folks coming out of homelessness or serve families below 80% area median income for 10 years. So this is a long-lasting investment with a very modest support in a housing stock that's desperately in need of reinvestment.
So when you're talking about per unit, then some houses might have 2 or 3 apartment units. So one structure could actually would be, maybe if you're saying 25,000 per unit, it could be conceivably a 75,000 investment. Some of these houses are fairly large and do have multiple units. So when you talk about units, you're talking about not
each apartment, each separate apartment.
Yeah,
and you're absolutely right. Some of the projects we've looked into that were funded, the property owner was completely changing the heating system, insulating the whole house, removing lead and asbestos, new windows. I mean, it was a gut rehab of a three apartment unit Victorian home, let's say in Rutland or St. Johnsbury, for example.
Josh.
Yeah, Bobby.
Yes, I'm wondering, what is the demand on that particular program? And is there any preference given to first come, first serve, first come that has never received? How's that all working out?
Yeah, great questions. There seems to be plenty of demand. We were worried at first with the CRF funds, especially the second round we dispersed, because we included a number of requirements to house the homeless with private landlords. And we thought we'd get some pushback, because that's often a challenge. It takes a lot of work and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. But landlords were lining up left and right, and they were willing to take that commitment, take that risk. These units have been offline for many years in some cases, and they're just sitting there. Property taxes are going unpaid, and yet we have this housing crisis. I think that because we have a system where we roll these grants out to our nonprofit housing providers, our homeownership centers that run and manage this for oversight to make sure the work is done and it meets codes and it meets there is an extensive application, and some landlords may not work through that whole process, but there is a pipeline that's waiting, and they know they can do more. So I don't have any concerns about that. And frankly, this could be an ongoing. That's what our hope is, that this one-time funding really establishes this program, that it can be done. We have hundreds of units that have gone through it. And then we have an ongoing program with, possibly smaller amounts of money, that this is always here to try to reinvest in our housing stock, because this has been missing for 20 or 30 years. There used to be a HUD program back in the 80s that did this, that provided these small rehab grants with a similar condition, a 5 or a 10-year affordability, and many thousands of private landlord owned apartments would take advantage of that. And it hasn't been around for 20 or 30 years. And our housing stock has suffered because of it.
Well, many of our small communities are suffering very badly with these vacant homes and houses. Our downtowns look like heck. And I can see where rural communities could really come alive with a program like this.
Absolutely. That's our hope. And the other unique piece of this is part of this, the $1 million that's in the base, is to do this with home ownership as well. that, there are some homes that are still affordable to people low to moderate income, but they need a lot of work. You can look in the paper, you can look in the listings, you can find homes are $80,000, $90,000 in parts of our state, but they need $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of work. And you just can't get that sort of combo mortgage and construction loan if you're lower income. And so this is an attempt to help with that, where we can invest in these neighborhoods, help someone of low to moderate income means purchase one of these affordable homes, and then have a grant that is managed by one of our housing partners to help them, fix up the home, weatherize it, actually utilize the weatherization funds that we're talking about through VHFA, as a match, and also target some of these funds to minority and BIPOC community, which have much lower homeownership rates in Vermont. So, our hope is to work on the rental side and the homeownership side by investing in these communities that really need this shot in the arm and our last naturally occurring affordable housing in the state that is there, but it needs investment. And we need to give a little state incentive to make this work for everyone.
Yep.
Good.
Sounds good.
Well, I think what we saw with our downtowns or our villages is similar to what we saw with urban areas. And that was for a number of years. People were leaving the down villages and they were moving out into the countryside and buying 10, 20 acres. And now people are beginning to realize the value of living in villages, the infrastructure that's there. But just like in urban communities, there was a lot of blight. The same thing happened in our little villages. So we have old housing stock, and I guess maybe I could figure out I haven't been able to do any of the rehab on all the derelicts that I've bought for the amount of money you're talking about, Josh. You must be better at it than I am. But I'm going to suggest we keep going because we have to be done about 25 after 2, or I'm going to have a nervous breakdown.
Okay. Let's go on to the next. I'll be quick for these next few. So you've heard about the Better Places Grant Program. There was a successful privately funded rollout of this. This is to establish this program with one-time funds, help a lot of these communities that have these great projects to reinvigorate their downtowns and villages, get people visiting again. You've seen examples of this. And then the Downtown Transportation Fund, this is for much bigger infrastructure projects. We've done a lot of planning on downtown transportation, making our communities more walkable and bike and transit friendly. But there are a bunch of planning studies on shelves. This is the real kind of one-time money that can actually make these come to reality. And we have more $20 million worth of these sort of downtown transportation planning projects that could benefit from this. And so we think this is the right use for a one-time investment to really make these communities more economically viable, reduce congestion and make them more vibrant. So I'll move on unless you have questions on these two.
No, I think we need to, because we have, see, we have a couple more commissioners to go.
And the last two, these are also should be familiar to you, the Downtown Tax and Village Center Tax Credit Program. This is an expansion of that, and it also includes neighborhoods. The existing downtown tax credit does not allow the funding outside of that very small ring around Main Street. This is to allow the neighborhoods that surround Main Street to those property owners, rental property owners, investment to take advantage of this tax credit, which works really efficiently. It's a reimbursable program. It fixes ADA and fire safety and sprinklers and code and facade. And sure you're familiar with that program. And then the last one is actually all of our other housing investments have talked about our villages and our downtowns. This manufactured home replacement tax credit, it exists. It's doubling what's there. This really helps folks more on the back roads, our rural Vermonters that live in an inefficient mobile home that takes a lot of money to heat and maintain. And it's not really a good rehab project. It really doesn't make sense what makes sense is to replace those homes with the new Energy Star mobile homes and the new zero energy modular homes. and it acts as a silent second to help someone purchase that. And it's only repaid when the home is resold or transferred. And this is a very successful program that helps folks in every county of the state. And so we think this is also needed, and this is an ongoing tax credit. So I think that's it for me. So if folks have more questions, otherwise I'll turn it over to Joan.
I don't know. I can't. All I can see is mostly the slide. Any questions, committee, or shall we move on to economic development?
Josh's phone number.
Oh,
How about I'll email it to you?
you want his cell?
Hey,
You want
Josh,
his home phone?
No, that's fine, Josh. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Josh, could you send out some information about the mobile home tax credit?
Yes.
Me specifically, or just email it?
Well,
Sure.
I think that for all of these proposals, there are white papers behind
Yes.
them. And so I think the easiest thing would be for the agency to just give us the white papers, which really give us the summary of the proposal, a bit of analysis, number of, for example, how many households or individuals would benefit and so forth. So that might be a good place to start with information that's there, and we're the basis for the governor making the recommendations as we're getting them today.
Will do.
So we might as well just do it for all the for
Yeah, and
everything
then
that you've
if
talked
Chrissy
about.
can post them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
All right. So shall we move on then to Commissioner Goldstein? Am I getting the sequence right? Okay.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. Similar to Josh's presentation, this first page is meant to be a bit of highlights, although there are so many programs within the department. Our department is 21 people in total, and the programs you have here are predominantly those that are state funded. The exception to the rule is procurement technical assistance, which is more primarily federally funded, but there is a state match. We have other programs that are all federally funded, and I'll just name them quickly so that you know. There's the Export Trade Assistance Program, which is an SBA funded program. There's also OEA, which is the Department of Defense program, and there's a Brownfields program. These major highlights, again, it's a little bit of a mixture. It's like the last fiscal year that we have full information on is fiscal year 20. You're already familiar, I bet, with the new worker grant program and what that resulted in. And there are just some general stats to give you an idea of the types of folks coming in and the age, et cetera. I don't have to spend that much time on this slide unless you want me to. Like, if you have questions, I'd be happy to ask, otherwise, and I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, we can get right into the meat of what we're asking for. Does that sound okay?
That sounds fine to me, unless anybody has got a question right now, and I don't see any yellow hands on my screen. So yes, we'll move next.
Just a general slide on, well, what do we focus on? It's really everything that goes toward the creation or enhancement of capital, whether that's physical, financial, or human capital development. We have a number of programs, as you saw on the prior page, to get that done. And really, a lot of that was put on hold for the last 11 months. As you know, we were responsible and worked on not only developing and designing the program, but actually executing the program. So it really resulted in quite a rejiggering of folks' responsibilities. We had over 300 million. The exact number with all the reconciliations is actually 330 million when you take into consideration the Department of Tax program. I'll go to the next page.
Okay. Oh.
The dreaded ups and downs, but really the big change this year is that there's a $500,000 up, which represents the proposal to create a new worker or new relocation incentive program as a part of our base budget. You might already be aware that Senator Sorokin has S62 in his committee, which basically merges what was known as remote worker and new worker into one program and attempts to simplify it so that we don't have these two separate disparate programs with disparate eligibility criteria, et cetera. And the idea here is that, yes, we've had people move into the state and that's great, but we still have population either stagnation or decline, any way you look at it. And we still have workforce shortages, notwithstanding the unemployment rate and the significant hit it took in the past 11 months. So the idea is to make this a bona fide economic development program and have it funded as part of our base. Heretofore, it has been one-time money. That is the largest up. The rest are kind of rejiggering funds. We had a position for the executive director of the Northern Border Regional Commission. That has gone away, so there's no need to have that there. And then we've spent down some of the OEA funds. We also are getting additional Northern Border Regional Commission capacity grants, which is extremely helpful. And we had also written out for a Brownfield EPA award. So those are the majority ones. We could move on unless there are questions.
I do have a question, and it has to do with the partnership when we're talking about recruiting workforce. And that is, I'm just thinking historically, Vermont has always had to import labor. There's a long pattern of that, whether it's a lot of the French Canadians came into the either farming, forestry, or into the woolen mills. We had the Italians in the granite industry. I mean, all around. And there was actually, I have family members on my husband's side that they recruited skilled Fairbanks Moore, skilled engineers in Germany. And I'm just wondering, we always, we focus about what the, how the state can fund and attract. How does this work with efforts on the part of manufacturers? I know some were in our area, they're recruiting because people might really like the recreational or the Kingdom Trails. So how do you, when you're putting out these efforts for workforce recruitment, is it in partnership, or how do you select, or I guess with this worker, whoever shows up. It seems like it's hard to understand in total what the efforts are to address our workforce and how much falls to government to support and how much falls to the employer seeking it. And then the other issue is how our wages are competitive, because we've been given data over the years that in fact part of our problem and why people leave is because for their training, they can earn more money in, say, the Boston labor market or other areas. And so it's a matter of wage competition, and people will go where it's to their advantage financially, and quality of life is nice, but it may not be sufficient to overcome the wage differential. So I'm just wondering what analysis you've done relative to what government does versus the employer specific needs.
Sure. So I often say we are not necessarily doing the recruitment. Each individual employer will post the jobs. They'll post them on a number of websites. Job Link is one of them. Indeed, any number of job sites. And on Think Vermont, we have an aggregator that aggregates all these other job sites. So generally speaking, the employer does the recruitment. Think of our program as really a complement to that, something that helps. And the publicity around remote worker, really, it could sort of sold Vermont before we even had to spend a dime on marketing. So I think think of it as just in tandem, right? So never before does a middle level worker get help with relocation, and so it's really meant to help defray the cost of moving house. It's a tremendous cost. So now that we've had COVID and we've seen the impact on the real estate market, and many people from away are very interested in moving. And when I say away, I mean heretofore metropolitan areas where they had to be. They don't have to necessarily be there. And in many cases, that might be a permanent situation. So let's do our part to participate and help defray some of those expenses, both on the remote worker side as well as to help employers. Having done the new worker for a year, there are all kinds of jobs coming in, all kinds of people. We first had a long-range occupational outlook. We went according to that occupation, and then they came up with occupations we couldn't even dream of. We didn't even know what these occupations were. So for the most part, the recruitment is on the responsibility of the employer, and this helps. Having said all of that, we will do more marketing and targeting to make sure that we specifically are looking for nurses and tradespersons and veterans. And we want more representation from minority and ethnic groups. And the governor has proposed a set aside of 100,000 of this 500,000 in order to do that. So I don't know if I answered your question specifically. I don't think we did troves of research on this. This is really a program that originated 2 years ago with remote work as a kind of an experiment. It became extremely popular. And then the critique was, well, why are we not doing this for Vermont employers, since our workforce is really either lacking in terms of just absolute numbers, as well as the specific training and expertise necessary to fill some of the open requisitions.
All right. I'm going to just keep going. We have a couple more. I see Senator Balance joined us. Thank you.
So here we are. So the new and relocated worker program will be one program, and we just kind of reviewed that. So it's a recognition that we want more folks moving to the state, more workforce, and to help employers fill these open jobs. The technology-based economic development program, I think we introduced this last year. It probably never made it to your committee because I think then COVID struck and that was that. But basically, when we say technology-based economic development program, what we're talking about is developing job-creating entities from the wonderful inventions and innovations that happen primarily at university level, but it could happen anywhere. And Vermont is one of like 3 states that does not have a specific program related to this. And the difficulty is the federal government makes tremendous amounts of money available in what they call the Small Business Innovation Research Grants. And these are grants that are given to small businesses from the major agencies of government, of the federal government that have an R&D budget. And Vermont has lagged. And so we want to do something about that. You know, these are difficult grants to get. We have a procurement technical assistance group in the Department of Economic Development. In the past year, they've been talking to some of these potential applicants. They are very daunted by how you go ahead and apply for it. So this money would be used to help with technical assistance. We may need a contractor to help with the grant writing. We may need a contractor to help some of the inventors actually convert what they're doing into sort of what I like to call plain English, that anybody would understand what the commercial opportunity is, and also offer state match grants up to $50,000 if they do indeed get an SBIR or STTR grant. And why is that good? What's good about that is as soon as there'd be state match available, we will know and we will have more information about the number of innovators and inventors out there so that we could then make sure that we nurture those so that those become job creating entities. UVM already has an innovations group, and that's great. And we've seen some excellent success stories from that. However, some of the inventions actually get licensed out to a business that's outside of the state. So we want the state to be involved in the coordination along with the Office of Engagement so that this could be a more managed approach. The idea at the end of the day is we want the jobs created here. We want these fledgling companies to scale up into job creating entities that create opportunities for the youth of Vermont.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I could, So thank you very much, Commissioner. I had Jess Vintner send me the white paper, which I read, and it's descriptive in nature. So I sent her another email, and kudos to her for getting back to me twice in this meeting. But when she got back to me, I had asked for numbers and where the money would actually go, and there was less clarity there. She said you might offer more. We don't have to do that right now, but I'm wondering if you can send me a breakdown of where would the $1 million actually go? How much would be grants? How much would be for your agency to operate in this sphere? How much would go to the Office of Engagement? The actual places where the money plugs in.
Yeah, we can get you that. But
Okay.
suffice to say, we're envisioning a grant agreement with, desired outcomes. So.
Yep.
Okay. Is there another? There should be another slide, right? Okay. International Business Attraction and Investment Program. So lots of states have international trade offices. We have like 2 sort of part-time people. They do things like international trade, but also work on attraction efforts. And we don't have the wherewithal, the largesse, to be all over the world. Really, we should focus on Canada. It is our nearest neighbor. It's our most important trading partner. And we have an excellent corridor just to our north in Quebec on aerospace. And many of these businesses that are located in Quebec want to locate in Vermont. The trouble has been, of course, the trouble is COVID, but even before COVID is just being in touch on a regular basis so that we could understand precisely when the decision will be made. So just to give you an idea, we go to trade shows and we bring Vermont companies to some of those trade shows. Some of the STEP grants go toward that expense. There, you'll meet the industry players. You'll learn about what they want to do. They want a U.S. foothold because they want typically U.S. government contracts. And Vermont is a perfect place for it, just that we don't have people on the ground to continue to develop those relationships, whether that's government officials, whether that's the businesses, the business associations, all the players. And we need that. And our neighbors have it. Plattsburgh has it. New Hampshire has enhanced their activity, and Maine as well. So we don't want to lose out. We thought this would be a good way to use it to test and see, what will this bring? Will we get more leads, more qualified leads? Will we be able to benefit from it? Because it is really the best opportunity for us. When we talk about recruitment of business, it's really Canadian business. That's what we're talking about.
Okay. I think probably Bobby's going to say the same thing. The northern RDCs have been very aggressive about pursuing and getting a free trade zone approved. So some work is going on, and I think probably we want to understand how this would fit more. Another country that you haven't mentioned, but we have a tremendous amount of trade, and that's Taiwan. Mm-hmm. And I think it's probably the semiconductor, but we're a major trade partner with Taiwan. Not that I'm suggesting we get a Taiwan office, but because they do have a office in Boston. But I think we want to understand, and I'm not sure who's assigned the ACCD section of the budget, but how that would fit with the work that's going on. The one thing that we have that Northern New Hampshire does not have, and that's good transportation connections. Mm-hmm. We've got it both on western side of the state and right up through Newport into the Sherbrooke area, and the same is true with rail. And so we know that we have some things going for us that particularly our neighbor to the east does not have, because there's not anything north of Littleton, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So how that would fit, and so it's one time and it's measurable. So I'm going to just keep going, but we do know that we've had a lot of work and a lot of focus there. And so it'd be clear, what would this do over and above or different than what is already happening and is being funded through the RDCs, and you
Right.
used to be a head of an RDC, so you understand that pretty well.
Yes,
Well,
and
we've got the expanded airport with a long runway. We got the free trade zone. We got, both Jay Peak and Burke Mountain attract many weekenders that would love to move here and move their business here, I think, to set up and run here if
Well,
we could promote it.
The advantage, of course, is having a location in the States because of the federal contracts. That's a major
major draw.
major draw is that advantage, the need for that. So I'm going
very
to keep going on to brownfields, and
Sure.
we've taken testimony from A&R
Well,
regarding the first year.
They could sell the brownfields to the Canadians to build on.
Well, they don't even want us yet. So, okay.
We share a very good relationship and partnership with A&R on this, and the idea is to spur, again, job creation, construction, get these properties cleaned up. We do get the federal money. It's not enough. Some of these projects are there. They've been there forever. The woman in A&R, who is our counterpart, told us that she began work at the state 17 years ago, and her first brownfields project was Jones and Lamson, and it's still her project. So, these are lengthy. These are very, very difficult, but they're untapped potential of redevelopment, primarily in downtowns, and they are a blight on their areas, and there's just potential that we want to put to use.
Okay, well, this is a total of 25 because there's 14,
correct.
And we have had some discussion around what work needs to. Are there some because we've got a fast track bill? Are there certain things that activities could get started immediately, and which pot of money is really the first phase versus second phase?
Yes.
My impression was that the DEC work was first,
correct.
And then
that is correct.
You would be this second year as it was described to us. Is that a correct understanding?
So the fast track, as I understand it, would be like $14 million. And what would happen is if A&R needed to transfer funds to us, they could. They typically start with the assessment, and we would do the remediation and sort of the project. When I say we do the remediation, we don't, but we would fund that. So it's a mixture. There's already prioritization in place through what we call BERA, which is where many agencies get together to prioritize the project. And all of these programs, all of these projects that we're speaking about for fast track are currently enrolled in Umbrella, which is a limited liability protection program. So I think the number is 14 million, and I think, yes, it would go to A&R, but my understanding was the fast track was that it would be before the July 1st fiscal year, and that the remainder would be in the 22 budget. So I don't know if I have that wrong, but that's what.
Well, that's what we've been talking about. I'm not sure what the House will know. They're passing their bill. I hate to rush, but committee, we're going to have to keep going because we are under a very strict time commitment to be done at 2:25.
Okay.
And so we will we'll have to keep going because we still have to hear from Heather Pelham.
Okay. Place-based economic development is really the project. It's really project-based economic development. It's instead of having an entity, a town, design an entire TIF district, it's basically what would be the project where you need an infrastructure. So it would be like a single project that would have to get done. It would help rural economic development. It would help those small towns and villages that don't have a full-time planner, a full-time planning and zoning group that could do that level of planning. And it would expand it beyond the large communities. So we are, I think this is still in Senator Sorokin's committee. GAP business grants is the continuation of the economic recovery. I think it's part of H615, H315, I think. And it's basically for those who are ineligible for the 2021 COVID aid. So, in the Economic Aid Act, of the end of December, we thought, okay, everyone will be covered. Well, not so fast. There are new businesses. There are businesses that would be found ineligible. So we want the state to be the grantor of last resort. And we would prioritize businesses that didn't receive anything before and have a loss in 2020.
And which program is that, Joan?
Oh, it's the one that's, it's in the fast track. It was, governor proposed it in the budget adjustment. And so we're going to be getting recommendations from our economic development. There are different views in terms of what should be the criteria, who should benefit, how to make it strategic. So that is, that's something that the funding is in the fast track bill that the House just passed, and it's going to be something that a component that we'll be considering as part of our fast track bill.
Senator Bruce and I have some additions to the criteria.
All right, well, you need to share them then either when we get to it, or you can give them to our colleague.
I just soon work on that with Phil in our room.
So I just want to ask a question of the committee, and also in fairness to Commissioner Pelham, I'm really not sure that 10 minutes is fair to you in terms of your presentation. I'm wondering if perhaps it would be a good idea to just have you have a little bit more time and do your presentation when we can ask more questions, and not try to do it within a hurried 10 minutes when we have to get off this Zoom conference. So committee, we may have more questions of either the secretary or the two commissioners that have testified, but my question really to Commissioner Pelham, to give you an adequate period of time for your presentation and questions, would you be able to come back if we scheduled some more time for you?
Madam Chair, I would actually really appreciate that. I would love to be able to give the committee, the
Okay,
time.
it just doesn't seem fair to try to squeeze it in
I
between
appreciate that.
now and so I apologize to have you do that, but I think in all fairness to make sure that people have a chance to ask questions, and for you to do justice to your section of the budget and your programmatic work, that to me, I would feel that's be preferential, but
very good choice.
oh, thank you, Bobby. I'm glad, huh? That's why I get all the big bucks here. Other questions of the I guess Josh is still on. I guess he might be on my other screen, of the secretary or the commissioners who have testified.
Madam Chair, the only question I have on your ruling is that later today or later sometime?
It's not, no, we have our 2:30 appointment. And no, it's a Friday afternoon. We have a week break, which will not be a break. It will just allow us to catch up with emails and all the calls that we've stacked up. And no, my plan was after we come back, where we have a little bit more testimony to finish up the 2022 budget. And so I would just schedule it as part of the testimony still to be heard once we return. No, I don't think Commissioner Pelham would really like to be a Friday afternoon after we take a break to get what she would hope would be perhaps full attention to her presentation. So I'm not proposing coming back, just to be clear. On the other hand, if you want to overrule me as committee chair, just let me know.
Well, I didn't know. Maybe you're going to work us from 4 to 6 or something.
I volunteered Bobby to do all afternoon after our next event.
Okay. I think the answer is everybody's kind of happy to call it an end to the day, and appreciate your coming on a Friday afternoon, and we will reschedule. Commissioner Pelham once we come back from our town meeting break. And with that, unless there are further questions, I'm going to suggest that we adjourn the committee for the week and thank everyone and hope we all have I'm sure the people in the administration will be happy to have us away and give them a little time to do